Have you ever noticed how some friends vanish the moment you stop being useful? Not dramatically, not with arguments or confrontation, just a slow fade into silence. The texts that take longer to answer, the invitations that somehow never arrive, the conversations that grow shorter until they disappear entirely. You've felt it, haven't you? That strange emptiness when you realize someone you considered close hasn't thought about you in months, maybe longer. Here is the question nobody wants to ask. What if most of your friendships are built on something far more fragile than you've been willing to admit? What if the very foundation of these connections isn't what you've been taught to believe? Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will fundamentally alter how you see every relationship in your life, and there's no going back once you understand it. I want you to think about your closest friendships right now. Really think about them. When was the last time you reached out versus when they reached out to you? Who initiates the conversations, the plans, the effort? If you stopped reaching out tomorrow, completely stopped, how many of those people would notice? How many would actually come looking for you? The answer to that question reveals everything, and most people spend their entire lives avoiding that answer because they already know what it is. We've been sold a beautiful story about friendship, that it's pure, unconditional, based on genuine care and mutual affection, that real friends are there for you, no matter what, that they value you for who you are rather than what you provide. It sounds wonderful. It feels true. And it's almost entirely disconnected from how relationships actually function in the real world. The gap between what we want friendship to be and what it actually is creates one of the most painful blind spots in human experience. Let me show you something that's been happening right in front of you. Every social interaction you have, every friendship you maintain, operates on a fundamental principle that nobody acknowledges out loud. It's an exchange, always. You provide something, they provide something, and as long as that exchange feels balanced, the friendship continues. Emotional support for emotional support, entertainment for companionship, social status for access, validation for loyalty. The specific currencies vary, but the mechanism never changes. This isn't cynical, it's simply how human connection works once you strip away the poetry. Think about the last time a friendship ended naturally, without drama or conflict. What actually happened? One person started investing less, providing less value, or perhaps started needing more than they could give back. The equilibrium broke, and once that balance tips, the relationship begins its slow dissolution. You've been told this is because people drift apart or grow in different directions, but that's just comfortable language for a more precise truth. The exchange stopped being worth it for someone. Watch what happens when you experience a dramatic shift in your life circumstances. Maybe you lose your job, or you go through a difficult period where you're not fun to be around anymore. Maybe you achieve significant success that makes others uncomfortable. Pay attention to who stays and who fades. The results will tell you more about the nature of your friendships than 1,000 heartfelt conversations ever could. Because real connection, the rare genuine kind, survives changes in circumstance. Everything else reveals itself as conditional. Every group you're part of, every circle of friends, has an invisible structure that everyone feels but nobody discusses. There's someone at the center whose opinions matter most, whose presence changes the energy, whose approval everyone unconsciously seeks. There are people in the middle, comfortable and included. And there are people at the edges, tolerated but not prioritized, present but not essential. You know exactly where you stand in every group you're part of. You've always known. The question is whether you've been honest with yourself about it. Here's what makes this recognition so uncomfortable. Once you see these patterns, you can't unsee them. You'll start noticing the asymmetry everywhere. Who gets responded to immediately and who gets responded to eventually? Who gets included in smaller, more intimate gatherings, and who only gets invited to large events where their absence wouldn't be noticed? Who gets asked for advice and who gets told what was already decided. These aren't accidents. They're data points revealing the true structure of your relationships. The people who will be most upset by this perspective are often those who've benefited from your inability to see it clearly. They needed you to keep believing in unconditional loyalty while they practiced conditional connection. They needed you to keep investing while they took. They needed you to stay in your assigned role in the hierarchy without questioning it. Your awakening threatens the comfort of that arrangement. So what happens when you start seeing clearly? You begin testing, not consciously at first, but inevitably. You pull back slightly. You stop initiating quite as often. You become a little less available, a little less accommodating, and you watch what happens. This is where most people discover something devastating. The majority of their friendships were held together by their own effort alone. Remove that effort, and the connection simply evaporates. This isn't about becoming bitter or cynical. It's about becoming accurate. Most people you consider friends are actually something else. Acquaintances who provide mutual convenience, familiar company, pleasant distraction. There's nothing wrong with these relationships as long as you see them clearly. The damage comes from mistaking convenience for depth, from confusing proximity with connection, from treating casual alliance as if it were profound bond. Real allies, genuine friends in the truest sense, are shockingly rare. These are people who actively want you to succeed, even when your success has nothing to do with them. Even when your growth makes their stagnation more obvious by comparison. They're people who tell you uncomfortable truths because they value your development more than your approval. They're people who reach out as often as you reach out, who notice your absence, who invest without keeping score because the relationship itself holds intrinsic value beyond any immediate benefit. You've probably spent years, maybe decades, surrounding yourself with people who don't meet this standard. Not because you chose poorly, but because you never applied any real filter. You accepted friendliness as friendship. You mistook consistency for loyalty. You assumed that people who'd been around for a long time were there by choice rather than by habit. And now you're beginning to wonder how many of these connections would survive genuine scrutiny. Here's the part that will change everything. Your friends, most of them, don't want you to evolve. They want you to remain exactly as you are because your predictability serves their comfort. The version of yourself that fits easily into their lives, that doesn't challenge them or complicate things or require them to grow alongside you, that's the version they prefer. When you begin changing, improving, questioning, seeing more clearly, it disrupts the equilibrium they've come to depend on. They'll resist your evolution in subtle ways. Gentle discouragement disguised as concern. Reminders of who you used to be framed as nostalgia. Questions about whether you're sure about the path you're choosing. These aren't expressions of care. They're attempts to maintain the dynamic that works for them. Your growth forces them to confront their own stagnation, and that's deeply uncomfortable. So they'll try to pull you back, often without even realizing they're doing it. You're facing a choice now, whether you wanted it or not. You can pretend you haven't seen what you've seen. You can go back to performing friendship with people who wouldn't cross the street for you. You can maintain your position in hierarchies that don't value you. Many people make exactly this choice because the alternative, being alone while you rebuild from a foundation of truth, feels too heavy to carry. But some people can't go back. Once the pattern recognition begins, it doesn't stop. You'll find yourself pulling away gradually, not with anger or announcements, just a quiet withdrawal. You'll respond slower. You'll decline more invitations. You'll share less. You'll expect less. And most of your friendships will simply fade because they were never built to survive your consciousness. They were built to sustain a role you've outgrown. The loneliness that follows isn't the absence of people. It's the presence of clarity. You'll be alone for a while, long enough to understand that being surrounded by the wrong people is far lonelier than being by yourself. Long enough to stop performing. Long enough to know your own value without external validation. Long enough to become someone who attracts real allies rather than collecting casual acquaintances. What you build afterward will be different. Fewer connections, but deeper ones. Relationships based on mutual respect rather than mutual delusion. People who see you clearly and choose you anyway. These friendships won't require constant maintenance because they're built on actual alignment rather than obligatory habit. They won't feel fragile because both people understand the exchange and value it. This path isn't comfortable, but it's honest. And in a world built on polite fictions and performed connection, honesty becomes the most valuable currency you possess. You'll lose the comfort of belonging to groups that never really wanted you. You'll lose the easy validation of people who liked the version of yourself you performed for them. You'll lose the illusion of having many friends. In exchange, you'll gain sovereignty, the ability to stand alone without crumbling, the clarity to recognize real connection when it appears, the strength to walk away from relationships that diminish you, the freedom to stop playing roles assigned by other people's comfort. You'll gain yourself, unfiltered and unperformed. So ask yourself honestly, are you prepared to lose friends? Not all of them, just the ones who needed you to stay blind. Just the ones whose connection to you depended on your inability to see what was actually happening. Just the ones who called it friendship when it was something else entirely. The crowd demands your unconsciousness. It demands your participation in shared delusions. It demands that you play your assigned role and never question the game. Your clarity threatens that arrangement, not because you'll attack it, but because your awakening reflects their choice to remain asleep. They cannot forgive you for seeing what they've chosen not to see. Most people will choose comfort over truth every single time. They'll return to their friendships exactly as they were, feeling empty but familiar. But you're different, or you wouldn't have stayed until now. You're ready to see clearly, even when clarity costs you everything you thought you wanted. You're ready to stand alone in truth rather than surrounded by comfortable lies. And that choice, difficult as it is, will define everything that comes next.